early on in our relationship, we introduced what I can describe as food binges. We would sit at home Saturday and Sunday, watch movies all day, and just stuff our faces with sweets. We wouldn't even cook. Maybe we would order a takeaway, but it was just, eating sweets all day long. And it became a tradition. To the point we would sometimes, this is embarrassing, but we would sometimes cancel plans with people because eating at home and eating sweets was more appealing than, being outside and experiencing life, which is so sad now just looking back.
Iwona, how did you find carnivore?
I found carnivore or ketogenic diet at the time 5 years ago when I was 35. I was the heaviest I had been in my life at that point. I was addicted to sugar and my eating habits were terrible, embarrassing. I was eating all day long, multiple snacks a day, in addition to 3 meals. Sometimes I would skip the meals because I just wanted to have more sweets. And I was thinking about food and specifically sweets all the time. I would wake up and fantasize about what I was going to have that day. I was never satisfied. I didn't know what satiation was. I was always hungry, wanting more. And there was no one to say stop to me. In fact, my portion sizes were getting bigger. And it's embarrassing to say, but I was eating my meals to the point I was completely stuffed and unable to breathe, because that was the only sign to my brain to stop, that I was possibly full. But you know what it's like when you eat a lot of carbs, half an hour later, you feel some room in your stomach. And I would already be rummaging in the cupboards, just looking for something to fill the hole. So that was really bad. And obviously what came with that was constant bloating, and just feeling like my body was always swollen, and I was getting headaches throughout my life. So these were quite regular. I was tired. I was waking up exhausted. I was completely unmotivated. I had moments when I was zoning out. When you're watching TV or reading something or even talking to someone, and all of a sudden your brain just switches off. You just can't process the stimuli. So you're just like sitting like a zombie for an hour, just, completely out of it. That was happening a lot. But all that was something that I considered normal and manageable. But I started getting some scary symptoms, scary to me. My headaches were turning into migraines with auras. So I had these strange visual symptoms that I've never heard before. And I remember going online and just, looking up, is it dangerous? What's the reason for it? And I was surprised to find that it's relatively normal. Everyone gets it once in a while. And I just couldn't believe it, because that wasn't normal. A headache, a migraine that affects your visual field. So, and just the migraines themselves were really debilitating at that point. So I would obviously be out in a dark room for hours, trying not to vomit, just waiting for the strong painkillers to kick in. And I also started getting really sleepy every day. And this was something different. This wasn't just the normal tiredness that I had. And obviously I had terrible sugar crashes. But I was sleepy even early in the morning. I would sometimes sit down and shut my eyes. I wouldn't even realize that I'd fallen asleep. So that scared me, because I thought I was going into some kind of diabetic coma. And because my son was only 5 at the time, and his dad, we were both in the same boat. So we were, enabling this overeating. And I was scared that one day one of us is going to, just pass out, go into coma, or get a heart attack, and our son wouldn't even know how to call for an ambulance. So in some rare moment of clarity, I thought, okay, enough is enough. I have to tackle this. But I didn't think that going to the doctor would help, because obviously I've been a patient before. I've worked in healthcare. I know how it works. So I didn't even know if they would take the sugar addiction seriously at that point. So instead, I just went online one day and I typed into YouTube sugar addiction, and guess whose video popped up? It was Dr. Ken Berry, and the video was exactly that: sugar addiction. Is it real? It's not going to be word for word, but sugar addiction, is it real? Ways to tell and how to fix it. So in the video, he asks a series of questions, and if you answer yes to even some of them, you're likely dealing with addiction. So not only did I answer yes to all of them, but I answered yes on a daily basis to most of them. So that was a bit of a shock to me. And then I think the final nail in the coffin is when I went online one day and I just calculated my body mass index. And to my shock, I crossed the threshold from overweight to obese. So that was it at that point. I've watched Dr. Berry's other videos and I was intrigued because I've never heard of ketogenic diet before. And I've done all sorts of diets in my life unsuccessfully. It was complete yo-yo effect. So I've watched these other videos, I came across other channels, and I heard all the success stories, and I was really intrigued because this diet was not about, just being slim and looking good, and it was more about being healthy, breaking bad habits, just feeling great and feeling healthy. So I decided to go for it. But at the time, I thought it was just going to be for maybe 2-3 months. And that I would relapse. But, that was good enough. I was just desperate at that point. I was worried that food would be boring and bland. I thought I would get this mother of all keto flus because going from so much sugar on a daily basis to nothing, I thought I would have really severe withdrawal symptoms. And by the way, that never happened. None of these happened. And I also thought, it's time that I change my relationship with food and change my attitude towards the food, because my relationship with food was really toxic over the years. And, I'm toxic literally and figuratively. So I know this was going to be a big deal for me. And just a bit of my background, and just to tell you how I got to this place. So I was born and raised in Poland. And not just the traditional dishes, but just the way people eat on a daily basis at homes is heavy in starches. So breads, buns, potatoes, pasta, rice, a lot of baked goods as well. So I always saw food as very comforting and homely. And I grew up with this notion that food was feeding your body as well as feeding your soul. And it was really hard to control. And I think the only reason people in that part of Europe, when I was growing up, were not generally overweight is because there wasn't eating between meals, snacking was not a thing. We didn't have any fast food restaurants. The choice in shops in terms of sweets and just processed foods, there wasn't much choice. And people generally knew that sweets were unhealthy and it was a waste of money. So unfortunately, this is changing, and Poland is just like any Western country these days. So as far as chronic diseases, cancers, mental health, unfortunately, the future is not bright for Poland. So I remember my first attempts at dieting in my late teens, and dieting always involved reducing portion sizes and calculating calories. So it would always leave me wanting more, feeling tired, never satisfied. Then at the age of 20, I moved to the UK, and all of a sudden I'm introduced to this new eating culture, takeaways, fast food restaurants, convenience shops just in general overflowing in sweets and ready meals and ultra processed foods, and also different cuisines and lots of restaurants. And I was mostly introduced to this by my boyfriend, who I then later married, and his eating habits were really bad. And looking back, our relationship always revolved around food. So we were going to restaurants all the time. We were ordering takeaways. We would grab fast food when we were out running some errands in town. And then on the way back home, we would bring a bag of sweets to eat whilst we're watching a movie later in the day. And so I started developing taste for these things, even though initially they were not even that attractive to me, but I started developing taste. And as you know, most of these things have been engineered to be hyper palatable. So I was, I think, already getting addicted at that point. Early on in our relationship, we introduced what I can describe as food binges. We would sit at home Saturday and Sunday, watch movies all day, and just stuff our faces with sweets. We wouldn't even cook. Maybe we would order a takeaway, but it was just, eating sweets all day long. And it became a tradition. To the point we would sometimes, this is embarrassing, but we would sometimes cancel plans with people because eating at home and eating sweets was more appealing than, being outside and experiencing life, which is so sad now just looking back. So yes, at that point, food was everything. It was comfort. It was a reward. It was a big tub of ice cream at the end of a stressful day at work. It was a pastime. I would reach for food when I was bored and I had nothing else to do. So it was just, completely sick. And throughout my 20s, my weight was obviously fluctuating a lot, and I was dieting all the time. Once a year or at least once every 2 years. And obviously it was a yo-yo effect, and I would regain all the weight back and some more. And I just remember feeling always tired, just waking up in the morning, and I slept really well all my life, but I was waking up feeling exhausted after a good night's sleep. And I was irritable, very moody, and just, I wasn't concentrating. And this is how I got to my 30s. And when I was 30, I gave birth to my son. And pregnancy and the breastfeeding period afterwards was my last attempt at trying to eat healthy. And by healthy, I mean, according to the food pyramid, and just trying to control my diet. But because my focus shifted completely onto my son, and I didn't care about the way I looked at that point, and obviously life happened and the blues of motherhood, and I quickly found comfort in food again. And that point, I just let myself go completely, and it lasted for a few years. And very quickly, I just reached that point where it got too much, and I was clearly addicted to sugar at that point. So I jump into keto, age 35, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks in, I have this surge of energy. I'm waking up refreshed. I'm motivated. I'm feeling really positive all day long. And that's the thing, that this energy was constant throughout the day. I had no more crashes. I didn't have to nap. I was actually finding ways to be active. I was spontaneously starting to exercise, which I never did in the past. I was really looking forward to all the activities with my son outside. And my weight started melting off just 2 weeks in. And the picture I sent you from August 2020, I actually looked like this in early April. I found a photo which isn't of very good quality, but so we're talking only maybe 6 to 8 months in, and I was back at weight I was at when I was 20, and I felt great. I had all this energy, and I could concentrate again. The headaches they stopped completely. In fact, the first headache I had was when I had the famous virus 2 years into keto, and then I had some headaches when I had some cheat days, but otherwise they've completely stopped. I could concentrate. I was just on such a high, and I was really enjoying food. It's almost like my taste buds were awakened. And when initially I thought the food would be really bland, but even just the taste of egg yolk or just a sip of heavy cream and or bacon, it's just, they're so flavorful to me that I cannot get bored of these ever. So that was the first 2 years, I'd say, and it was such a high, and I felt invincible. I was exercising, I was constantly active. Sometimes people would ask me, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And I would say, "I'm feeling really well. I'm feeling healthy." But I don't think they understand what it's like. It's just another level of feeling good and feeling healthy. And some might say that feeling the way I was feeling was just a typical effect after having any diet. You lose a ton of weight. It's less strain on your body. You gain your self-confidence back. But no, this was completely different. This was just another level of feeling great and energized. And let's not forget about what was happening at the time. We're talking 2020 and 2021. Okay, life was challenging at the time. In fact, I remember just 2 weeks before it all kicked off with the virus. I remember I was commuting. I had a new job. I was commuting to London for 2 hours one way, so 4 hours a day, which was completely ridiculous. And then I announced to my husband that I'm leaving our marriage. And then 2 weeks later, we're all locked down for months and we're just, marinating in this revelation. And then outside, the world is falling apart. Nothing is guaranteed. Jobs are not guaranteed. And obviously then later on I move out and we have to reorganize our lives. So life wasn't fun at the time. And I would say that was the most challenging time of my life. And yet it was one of the best times of my life because I just felt so great. And don't get me wrong, I felt sad. I had days I was angry, I was stressed, but I was never tired and I was never mentally powerless. So yes, that was great. And then fast forward to me now at 40, I feel great. I feel better than I was at 20. And I feel like I've been blessed with this extension to my youth.
You've stayed keto the whole way through?
So initially I started keto with a short list of veg and some berries and some nuts and cheeses. And it then naturally, I just phased them out because I couldn't be bothered to work out all the grams of carbs and just making sure the ratios of macros were right. So I went from what I call Dr. Berg's keto to Dr. Berry's carnivore. And Dr. Berry 5 years ago was still on keto. I think he was just transitioning into carnivore. So I kind of moved away from the traditional keto with him. Although it's still not perfect, I still occasionally have some nuts, avocado, sauerkraut, maybe once or twice a year in the summer I'll have a handful of berries. But eating schedule wise these days. Oh, and I forgot to mention, when I first went keto, I was full all the time. So I had to introduce intermittent fasting and sometimes OMAD because I was so full all the time that I was automatically postponing all the meals anyway. So, and that really helped. And, turned out I didn't have to eat all the time. I didn't have to have 3 meals a day. So right now my eating schedule is I'll have a cup of coffee with a heavy cream, 50% fat. And I'll then have my first meal around 1 to 3 p.m. My second meal between 5 and 7 p.m. Sometimes if I'm busy or if I'm not that hungry, I'll just have one meal anytime between, let's say, 3 and 6 p.m. And I'll exercise in the morning when I'm fasting. Sometimes I'll have electrolytes, keto electrolytes in the morning after I've exercised. And as far as what I'm eating, so I've mentioned I still occasionally have these things like nuts, avocado, sauerkraut. I still have cheddar cheese and feta cheese, but the staples are obviously eggs, beef in the form of steaks and mince or ground beef. I'll have pork, so bacon, chops, mince or ground pork. I like sardines. I have sardines frequently. I like livers, and I'll have all kinds of livers, mainly cod liver, which I love. So cod liver, chicken liver, beef liver. And I think that's it. And especially when I'm having the ground meat, I'll just have it sprinkled with some feta or cheese. And that's it. Everything cooked in butter or beef drippings, and with some salt. That's it. Very simple.
So what did people around you think about this? Has anyone said, like, why are you doing this crazy diet?
So because they saw the difference in how I looked, it was obvious that it's working. I'm feeling great. And I kept saying I'm feeling great. And initially it's a shock when they find out it's just, copious amounts of fatty meat. But then when I tell them I'm feeling really well, they don't probe anymore. And when I go and visit my family, sometimes they used to always offer all these things. And when I get together with my family, it's always a feast. But they stopped offering me things, and they'll always say like, "Oh, I know, we know, you're going to say no, but it's, it's there, it's on offer." And there's like different types of cakes and things, and some people know about my lifestyle, and they'd still like try to tempt me and offer me food. And obviously I did have some cheat days, mainly because, let's say, there was some kind of social event and I didn't want to be fussy, or I was traveling and I wasn't prepared. Sometimes it's let's say a situation like a neighbor brings me a big piece of cake for me to try, and I just, I don't like to waste food, and I didn't want to throw it away, so I just had some. But I usually fast 24 hours afterwards, and I'm just back to normal, and it's never going to be a problem again.
Wow. So for you, is this kind of the lifestyle going forward? There's no going back?
Absolutely, there is no going back, and yes, I'm prepared that maybe some days I'll have to accept something that someone is offering, or eat leftovers after my son's been, and there's always some leftovers, and there's, I don't want to throw something away, but yes, that is definitely the way forward. I'm not looking back, because of just the way I feel, and I feel like I'm really healthy at this point. I don't have any health issues, and I want to keep going like this.
So when you made the transition from keto to carnivore, at that point, did you notice anything improving?
Not much, because my energy just kept increasing. And I forgot to mention, at some point, maybe 1 year in, somewhere between 1 and 2 years, I haven't even realized, but one day I'm just looking down on my arm, and I had developed keratosis pilaris in my late 20s. So I had these bumps on my arms and my thighs, and they would frequently get red and inflamed, and I didn't realize they were all gone completely. Not just the redness, the bumps were completely gone. So that was the what I've noticed between keto and carnivore, although I don't know at what point this happened, but I was constantly energized. I felt fine. Not much of a difference, but I think with keto, I was more open and exposed to maybe cheat days and some old cravings. And I remember when I found almond flour and some keto-friendly sweeteners, and that stage lasted for a few months, and I had to be shut down in the end because I was making these keto cookies, and I started to like them a little bit too much, and I would wake up and think, oh, today I'm going to have some keto cookies. So that couldn't go on any longer. So I think when I'm eating closer to carnivore, the thoughts about food are completely gone.
So a friend comes to you and says, I want to do carnivore. You've had good results. What advice would you give them?
I would say go cold turkey because I don't do things gradually. I just jump straight in, and just give it a few weeks, because it may seem difficult in the beginning and so different, but at some point, your body will just hit that switch, and I'm guessing that switch is when your body stops utilizing glucose for fuel and changes into ketones. So once you hit that point, it will just feel great. And stop looking at food as anything else other than nutrition for your body, to live, to function. It's not your comfort, it's not your pastime, it's not your reward, okay? It's supposed to feed your body for you to be able to live and thrive.
That's really good advice. Just focus on the nutrition side of it. Don't worry. Don't think of it as entertainment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ivona, do you have any way for people to reach out to you? Do you have any social media or anything?
I'm not active on social media, or I don't have any platform where I post my life. So I would maybe leave my email, and whoever wants to get in touch, they're very welcome to send me an email.
Sure, I'll put your email in the show notes. Ivona, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dave. It was fun, and thank you so much for having me on. And all the best to all the community.